In this module, we're going to talk you through installing the MMS automation agent and then using that agent to configure a standalone MongoDB running on the local host. To facilitate doing that on Linux, I've switched over to our Linux VM, an Ubuntu-based Linux VM here, but I'm picking up from the exact spot we left off in registration, which is this Begin Setup button. Before I start, I'll just note that if you've gone through some of the setup already, you may end up at a screen like this. There's nothing configured in this group, and you can see that there is an option to return to setup. So if you are in this screen and you want to follow along, just hit return to setup, and you get back to this sort of wizard that will guide you through your initial setup. So hitting begin setup, we're going to use the local instructions. There are other options here, but we're going to stick with local. It's the most straightforward, simplest one, and we are running locally even though it is VM. So let's go with that. Again, we'll stick with simple. We could use a replica set, we could do a sharded cluster, but just to keep things straightforward, we're going to go for a standalone MongoDB instance, which you might use for testing or developing on your local machine. We're going to call this instance education-demo-1. We're going to use the default /data DB path. I happen to know this one already exists and has the correct permissions. You'll see that in the instructions in a minute, but it'll save us a little bit of time later on. Okay, so here's where we actually get to the meat of the installation. We have a link here, a drop-down menu for our computer to download the automation agent. And you can note there it's telling you that these ports should be open and not in use. Unless you're already running MongoDB or something similar, then you're probably not going to have any problems with the port ranges 27,000 through 27018. But just to be sure, make sure that those ports are indeed available. Now, as I mentioned, this is an Ubuntu VM, so we'll be following the instructions for the Ubuntu 12.04 Plus here. RHEL, CentOS, SUSE, Amazon Linux, in other words, everything RPM based will be listed off here. Very, very similar, just slightly different install methodology. Other Linux gives you a generic way to install this without either package managers involved, and then finally macOS. But we're going to use the Ubuntu instructions. So if we scroll down, those should now be populated. Step by step, the first step, which I'm going to run here from the command line, is of course downloading the actual package itself. So there you go, the package downloaded pretty quickly using curl. The next stage is to actually install that. We're going to use the dpackage command to do it. This is listed in the instructions, but it's just as quick to type it out than switch back and forth. We're using the -i flag, which is install, -r is removed. There's a bunch of other options for dpackage. And if this was CentOS or RHEL, then this would be an RPM package and this would be an RPM command, but very, very similar otherwise. So let's run that, get the package actually installed. Quick note here, you can see it's adding a MongoDB group, creating home directories, doing a bunch of setup appropriate, and setting some recommended system parameters as well. Going back to the instructions, you can see here that the next step is to edit the config file and set these MMS group and MMS API key fields appropriately. And these will look different for your group and your API key, but they will be these strings of alphanumeric digits. Here's the config file, and as you can see, the group ID and the MMS API key both have placeholder values in there waiting for you to essentially populate them with your relevant values. So let's do just that. With those populated, let's save that file, continue on with our instructions. So the final piece is to make sure that that DB path that you specified earlier on actually exists and has the correct permissions. Let's verify. I think it'll exist, but it may have the wrong permissions. So it does exist, but as you can see at this top line here, it actually has the user and group of M202, right? So that's one thing that we do have to fix. It's in the instructions, so let's take advantage of that. Quick check, and the top line directory has been changed to MongoDB as required. Okay, so now we should actually be ready to go. Final step is to actually start the agent itself. So let's do that. The automation agent is running. We should be able to switch back here. And you'll notice that step 5 is to verify the agent. And that's actually going to check to see if the agent has successfully started, reached out to MMS, and is available. And it is, so that's excellent. And this VM identifies itself as localhost. You may get other values in here depending on how you have your Linux VM or Linux host set up. Localhost is fine for this one. We're only setting up a single instance. Let's hit continue. So the review and deploy. You'll see that we're going to have the automation agent, the monitoring agent, and the backup agent running on the one host. There's not really much choice. We only have one host to deploy on, so that's where they're going to go. The backup agent, of course, being completely optional. Won't be doing anything because we haven't set up backup yet. The sort of interesting part is this process down here. So this education demo 1_1 on port 27,000. That is the MongoDB standalone instance that we've asked to be created. And you can see it's going to be on version 2.6.5. And this little orange marker here indicates that it's to be done, right? So it's going to be added here and installed. Now, if we'd added more hosts, in other words, if there was more than just this local VM to choose from, you'd be able to drag and drop processes between them to change your layout, change how you're deploying your instances and perhaps other MongoDB processes across your host. But for now, this is as simple as it gets, and it works pretty well. So let's confirm that and hit deploy. Excellent. Now, while that's going on, it gives you a little quick view, quick run through even, of the various different modes that you can get into, how to connect to the instances, and then it will finally pop you out into your deployment view here. So that's actually been completed. It has been deployed, and it gives you some helpful hints here about connecting and the view and edit modes. We're currently in edit mode. Let's pop back to view mode. So there's our local host, port 27000. That's our standalone instance. Let's quickly click on that. And you can see that monitoring has been started and things like that. There's not much activity going on yet, but we add more graphs. They'll all start to be populated over the next few minutes. So there you go. That's a standalone MongoDB instance deployed on a local Linux host using the pretty straightforward step-by-step instructions available on the MMS website.